So a couple of years ago, actually a little over 2 years ago now, I started this channel, and I think the very first guest, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was certainly the first person I invited, Warren. I don't remember if you ended up being the first, but you were the first I invited. And we had a lot of fun back in those days, putting up bigger numbers than the other guy. You put up a number, and I said, "No, it'll be more than that." But you became pretty famous for being the uberest of the Uber bulls, and I was sitting there right with you, agreeing that the numbers would be big, and everybody's laughing at us. They're not laughing
Yeah,
so
I
much.
still get people who are saying, well, you said it was going to happen by this year or whatever. And like, it's not following the path that I thought it would follow.
Right, right,
But the growth, the exponential curves, the exponential change happens in an odd way.
right.
But we are staring. I mean, I think the Robotaxi network is starting in June. And I don't know how long reasonable investors can hold off on figuring it out.
Right.
Like, 'cause let me, before we get into some other stuff that we're probably going to talk about, the one the one view I have that I think is fairly accurate, and I want to hear what you think of this. Maybe we've talked about this before, but I think roughly 1% of investors in the stock market understand Tesla the way we do. There's a few of us.
That might be high.
It's a good ballpark. I'm just saying it could be 0.5%, could be 2%, whatever. Roughly 1% of the market really understands that robotaxi is coming, that
Right,
robots are coming, that
right,
that Tesla Energy is actually a really big growth and highly
right,
profitable
right,
business. And there's so much about Tesla that we get that, and the point is that 90+% of the market has no idea. Like, not even like they know about Optimus and they think it's silly. They don't even know about Optimus. Like, I mean, maybe they've seen a video somewhere. They haven't given it a second thought. 90+% of the market. So the way I see it is, we get it. I'm all in. You're probably heavily in. A lot of my friends are heavily in. Some are all in. And there's going to be a moment where some of the rest of the market starts to figure it out. Like, and I think the robo taxi network operating, like, if you're an investor and you're like,
right.
okay, I've been invested in Uber, I've looked at Lyft, I followed Grab in Asia, whatever. I'm aware of this ride sharing business, and oh, look, now Tesla, it's a Fortune 50 or Fortune 10 company or whatever, and they're starting a ride sharing business. I should probably take a look at this. It doesn't have to be 90%, right?
Right.
Like, if like 10% of the 90%,
Right.
right, start to look at this. So you got 100 as a whole, and one is us,
Right.
90 something is the rest. If nine start to say we should take a look at this, that's nine times, and then they figure it out. That's 9x on the demand on the stock.
Right.
And my theory is, and I don't know whether my theory is sound, is that in between the 1% and the 90%, there's a group, and it might be, 1.5% and 95%, or there's a group of people who you and I would call probably traders.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. And the traders, some of the traders get it. They don't get it fully, right? But they get it. They know there's something happening. And what the trader wants to do, because the trader mentality is never, I'm going to buy, and I see this thing's going to grow over time, and I'm just going to hold it.
Mhm.
The trader mentality is, I want to get in ahead of the rush.
Right.
I'm looking for lots of stocks to play, and I'm going to put my money in this one and ride this curve up, and then I'm going to jump off and I'm going to ride the next curve up. So if you think that this is going to happen, and you're one of those traders, and you think, well, they're going to start the network in June, that's Q2. Some of the 90% are going to figure it out in Q3.
Mhm.
Well, I want to buy ahead of that. So I want to buy in Q2. Well,
Mhm.
now if if the traders are 9% of the market and 30% of them get it, that's still a 3-to-1 increase in demand for the stock. Right? The traders start buying, then the other traders start buying,
Right.
and
Right.
all of a sudden you've got basically a 10x in demand in the stock already. And as the traders start buying, then the stock starts going up and other people start looking and saying, what's going on?
Mhm.
And I don't know that that's going to happen. It's like a gut hunch. I don't know if the trader part makes sense. I think
Mhm.
the large body of investors, the Warren Buffett followers, whatever, the at some point you're looking for growth and you say, okay, let me model this new business that I really didn't think about before. And like, wait a minute. If they have 10 million robo taxis, which is not a crazy number,
Right.
and it only costs them 30 cents a mile to deliver a ride, but they're able to charge $1 a mile for a ride, and they drive 100,000. Like, oh, that's $40,000 in gross profit a year. Times like that's $400 billion in gross profit. Like we've done that math before.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think so. The short answer is I think that's coming. Um, Q3, but I'm very bad at short-term predictions.
Yeah, yeah.
And like I think, and the thing about the Robotaxi network starting in June is there's one thing when Elon says something's going to happen.
Hmm.
Lars said it's going to happen.
Hmm.
Franz said it's going to happen. The team, it's one thing for Elon to say something, everybody's like, oh, Elon's just being Elon. But when the team is behind him, when Gwynne Shotwell says something's going to happen,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
SpaceX is going to do that, right? The timing is more dead on when Gwynne says it than necessarily when Elon says it. When Lars and Franz and um, Vaibhav, right? When the team is saying it, okay, it's more likely to happen now. So I think June, and maybe it's July, right? They're not always perfect on timing, but say I don't care if it's August.
Yeah, yeah.
I think by the end of this year, the market figures it out. Like some chunk of the 90% jump in.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that, did Tesla deliver 5 million vehicles this year like I predicted in the past? I'm making up the number of 5 million. I don't know if
Right,
they
right,
said
right,
five or
right,
six
right.
or four, whatever, but did they deliver 5 million in 2024? No.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? The growth path on
Yes,
vehicle. And
yes.
that's because Tesla changed strategy.
Hmm.
The strategy changed from let's make as many vehicles as we can to let's invest everything we can in FSD
Hmm.
and let's build these monster instead of building a factory to build more cars, and instead of investing in building and engineering a new model, let's put that money into building a cluster.
Yeah, well, the opportunity changed because it went to end-to-end neural net.
Yeah,
Three years ago, 3.5 years ago, it was still coding,
yeah.
and all of a sudden it was neural net. And the way to do neural net is to buy,
Yeah.
100,000.
I think I think it was about 2 years ago. I mean, Elon at some point said, if you don't think of us, if you think we're just a car company, if you don't see us as an AI and a robotics company, and you don't think we're going to solve autonomy, then don't invest in the company. I think there was a moment where Tesla just said, all right, we're now investing $10 billion a year in chip. I'm making up the number 10 billion, but we're now investing $10 billion a year in building GPU clusters. Right. And that means we don't have the money to build a factory. And we don't have the engineering resources.
Mhm, mhm.
We're devoting our engineering resources to Robotaxi. It's more important for us to develop an efficient cyber cab than it is to develop a 7-passenger SUV or a economy car with 5 seats and a steering wheel and pedals. Like it's like that's no longer important.
Right.
Not to say that they're not going to come up with something, but like I get it, and we don't need to build Giga Mexico yet because we're not ready, and then there's trade issues, whatever. So I think some things changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Um, but
yeah, they
but
changed. There
but
was no.
regardless, the profit story that I generally talked about. I mean, I had a battery revenue model in the past. I'm not sure how much that still holds up. I think it does, but
Mhm.
I
I think
think
it does.
I think the big thing that's coming that I've been talking about for a long time is the robotaxi model is upon us. Optimus, I think, in terms of generating revenue and being something that the market will look at and really get, it's probably a year plus away.
Mm.
Like they're gonna start making bots in volume, small volume this year,
Mhm.
larger volume next year. I don't know whether they start selling bot Optimus to customers in 26 or maybe more likely 27.
You had two announcements this week from competitors saying they were shipping, their bots like now.
Competitors are irrelevant.
I'm just saying you've got the mood. The mood is out there. I don't think Tesla's behind these guys. So if they're making um, saleable product now, I'm sure Tesla will be making
But
saleable product
but
by
somebody
the.
announces we're selling some robots. What's the volume that they're doing? Are
Oh,
they
I
doing a
have no idea about the
5,000 or are they doing a
volume. But
5,000?
Elon, but Elon has said he thinks he'll make 50 to 100,000 next year.
No, no,
Those.
no. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm
Okay.
saying is
Yeah.
when you tell me that Figure
Yeah. Yeah.
or some Chinese company or whatever is shipping robots to customers, how many?
Yeah. Not that many. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not meaningful until you're going to scale.
Right.
And they can't scale. And you can't like if you're training bots on tasks and you've got 1,000 tasks to train them on, the real value is coming up with a bot that learns quicker.
Yeah. Mhm.
It maybe can teach itself to do the task.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right? That's where we're heading with Optimus. Is it'll like be able to you tell it what to do and it's able to figure out how to do it because it understands the real world.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like, I think and as an investor, I'm looking at the future and I'm saying,
Right.
and I don't know if we talked about this before, but I now have a ballpark $150,000. At the time I bought them, I think they're down now because the stock is down a little bit, but I
Yeah.
have about $150,000 in 2-year options
Mm, mm.
that strike date is January 2027, with strike prices ranging from like 600, 850 or something like that. Um, and if the market takes off, those become crazy. Like if
Okay.
Tesla stock doubles, they might go up 5x.
Right.
If Tesla stock triples, they might go up 12x. It's
Right.
one of these things where like the
Yeah.
gains are exponentially larger.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that being that far out, those are pretty safe bets. There's no safe bet, but
No,
those are pretty safe bets.
I could say, yeah, I buy leaps also. So yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. And sorry, I just interviewed a guy named Tad who has an ETF called TESL, and I was listening to his strategy, and I wasn't persuaded by it, but one aspect of the strategy jumped out to me, and I don't know if it's possible. Something like 20% of his fund goes into like long options,
Hmm.
and I'm thinking, what if I made an ETF that only did long options, long Tesla options, like you were
Yeah.
just buying 2-year long calls on
Right.
Tesla?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm suggesting that is because Tesla's stock price is so high, the cost of buying just one option at almost any strike price is at least $6,000 or $7,000, and often more than $10,000 for one option.
Hmm.
It's very hard to trade options or buy options efficiently when the price is so high. And maybe there'll be a split in the future, and maybe that'll help, but I'm not sure that matters so much. But
No, I think it matters. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that actually happens when they split is the options get more affordable.
I think for a small investor, any investor, it's probably, it depends on your risk tolerance or whatever. I don't think you want to have more than 20% of your portfolio in long calls.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think 10% is probably a 10 or 5 or 10% is a more reasonable number. Um, and I'm in the ballpark of 10%, right? I don't think I'm close to 10. I'm not to 10% yet, but I'm getting closer. Um, and I think for let's say you had $100,000 in your portfolio and you're going to put 10% in long calls, like you don't have a lot of
Right.
room.
That's my point. Yeah, that's why the
So
split would matter.
if you had an ETF that said, well, we're going to buy options and we can do it at scale, now
Hmm.
you can buy into long options without with letting somebody manage how to do it
Right.
and how to and being not being hamstrung by the well, I can only buy one.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can't buy one. I can't
Right.
buy one at the
Right.
price.
Can I
If I
buy a
got
whole one?
$10,000 to put in, and that particular option I wanted to buy was $12,000, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Then I have to buy a suboptimal option for $9,500, and maybe that wasn't the one I wanted.
Right.
So anyway,
All right.
anyways, I'm optimistic about Tesla's future. I'm excited about SpaceX and Starship and Starlink. I'm excited about Neuralink. I think Neuralink is going to grow fast. I'm actually hoping to get in on a funding round for Neuralink this year.
Mhm.
I don't have any news about it, but I think that may happen. Boring Company in Dubai. I was just in Phuket, Thailand. Like we need Boring Company in
Yeah.
Phuket. We need Boring Company. It would be a game changer in
Everywhere.
so many places.
Yeah.
And NXAI coming out with Grok 3, and I think what X is doing in terms of I'm enjoying the conversation on X. I think there's so much good happening. But
So,
the thing I'm most excited about right now, the thing I'm most passionate about right now is watching Democrats on the left, both in the United States and Europe, just digging themselves deeper and deeper into a hole. I don't
so,
understand it, but that's the thing that I'm motivated about.
Elon's a part of that story too. I mean, he's been helping them. He's
And
been
just to be clear,
handing them
I can't,
shovels.
I have not had a baby with Elon. I know I'm marked safe from having Elon's baby. Be clear.
Of course, but many leftists would think that you could if you wanted to. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's part of it. No, it's just like so. Look, I was not a Trump fan. I actually don't think Trump was that great in his first term. I think he spent too much money. I think he did some good things, but I think the attacks on him were off base. But I didn't think he was that great. I think the second term so far has been like the best start for any presidency in my lifetime by a long stretch.
He's changing the world I mean, literally making changes that are
Yeah.
what would you call it? Earth shaking, I guess would be one way to put it. But I mean, that's pretty much all we've been talking about for the last 5 or 6 days on my channel. is that, he wants to cut military spending in half. He wants to eliminate nukes. He's completely eliminated DEI from the schools. I mean, it hasn't 100% happened yet, but the DOJ is going to go after the grade schools and the high schools and everybody else if they don't
Yeah.
take DEI out. I mean, the
Well,
things that are happening are monumental in their scope.
yeah, and DOGE. And,
DOGE.
and
Yeah,
it's like every day you read a list of things that they cut and you start laughing and then you say, wait a minute, that was my money.
yeah, that's right.
I don't,
Yeah,
I jokingly say, we shouldn't fund gender equity studies on the Brazilian sparrowfish. And like I say it as a joke, and like I'm waiting to see, like it's probably going to come up in 3 days that we were studying some sort of gender equity on some kind of fish and somewhere.
because it's beyond parity.
Yeah.
There are times when things get beyond parity.
Yeah. But
Um,
so the thing that strikes me is it's so obvious that what DOGE is doing is good,
right,
right? And keep in mind, DOGE does not make a single cut.
right.
DOGE identifies
It says,
things that should be cut,
right,
refers it to the department, gives them the information.
yes,
Like, so maybe it's Department of Education, maybe it's the USAID, whatever. Maybe it's just to the president himself and says, hey, we've identified this
right,
error
mhm,
and it should be fixed. And then somebody fixes it.
right.
And so I guess now that I think about it, there's two things that I'm passionate about. One is I watch the Democrats and they're like angry that Elon and these teenagers or whatever have access to Treasury data. It's like, like a month and a half ago, we found out that the Chinese hacked the Treasury data and none of you guys said a word.
Right.
Biden was president. It was the end of December. And this huge story that the Chinese hacked the Treasury database is like, who cares if some teenager working for Elon sees the data? The Chinese already have it.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, like all the data's already out. Like you guys didn't have any security. You're using COBOL. You're keeping paper records in a mine somewhere. I mean, so I think that there's really positive news coming out of DOGE, but I just watch so we had the election, right?
Right.
And Trump wins.
Yes.
I didn't know he was going to win. I thought he was going to win as we got close to the end. I thought he was going to win. I didn't know. And Democrats were deluded and they said there's no way he's going to win and blah, blah, blah. And now like the truth is coming out and the American voters spoke, and you can argue it was a close election, but the American voters still spoke.
Mhm.
And they won not just the White House, but the House and Senate, I believe. I
Yep.
think they won both
Yep.
houses.
Three in the House, and I
Maybe
think
it's close in the Senate, but JD Vance breaks the tie
yeah.
or something like that.
They have at least one or two. I forget.
Yeah. So, they
There's three in
won.
the Senate. Three in the
And
Senate.
if I think if you're the Democrats, the natural reaction would be, geez, why did so many people vote for Hitler? Right. And so many like it's been going for months now that it's like, well, we didn't tell people he was a convicted felon enough.
Yeah, right.
We didn't repeat the convicted felon lie enough. We didn't tell people he was like all you did for several months was tell us he's Hitler. Tell us like they kept saying like it was like they were programmed to use the term convicted felon. Like Alex Soros was paying everybody.
Right.
Every time you use the phrase convicted felon, you get an extra $100, right? And they just kept saying convicted felon, but maybe we should have said it more. Like you people obviously didn't hear us, as opposed to it's not landing, your
Yeah.
message is not working.
Yeah.
You might want to think about a different message.
And a
And there
different medium. They were in the wrong medium. Should
that
have been
too.
on
That-
long form podcasts like this is
yeah.
where is where
Well, they
is
can't.
yeah.
The truth is that Joe Biden couldn't go on Joe Rogan for 10 minutes, much less 3 hours.
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris, she wouldn't last an hour on Joe Rogan. Like they're not genuine. Well, first of all, Biden was gone.
Right.
Weekend at Biden's.
Right.
He was not cogent. And that they don't. I've got so much. I'm partly angry, like because I'm a registered Democrat. I'm still a
Okay.
registered
Oh, I
Democrat.
thought you were a registered libertarian. I didn't know you were a
I'm a
Democrat.
registered Democrat in Palm Beach County, Florida,
Oh,
which is
because you wanted to be able to impact their primary.
the primary vote doesn't matter if you're a Republican in Palm Beach County. But I'm a libertarian.
Yes.
Right? I don't historically I haven't liked either party. Like I said, Trump spent too much money. Um, and the previous Republican president spent too much money, and many Republican members of Congress, whatever, they spend too much money, and I don't agree with them on certain issues, whatever. I'm I support open borders, but not the Democrat version of open borders, where you fly them in for free and then give them money. Like,
Yes.
that's not open borders. I think if Jose walks across the swims across the Rio Grande, and we don't give him anything, and he goes and finds a job and does work that Americans don't want to do, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But if Muhammad gets flown in from Pakistan with an AR-50, with an AK-47 and some C4, like, maybe, and a history of, like, homicide convictions, like, maybe we shouldn't let that one in. Maybe we should have some standards. We probably shouldn't fly them in. Like, we
Right.
shouldn't buy them the free flight. Like, they were flying. I think something like 5% of the population of Haiti lives in America.
Because they flew him in. Yeah. Yeah.
They're just like, I don't support that.
Yeah.
But
I've been to
the
Haiti.
Republicans weren't doing that.
I've been
But
to
I mean, just
Haiti, and
my
I
my
certainly
point is
understand why
just
they
like,
left.
my point is just like, it's not like I've been partisan Republican my whole
Right.
life.
Right. Right.
I have been a Republican. I have been a Democrat. I tend to view myself as, I don't want to say moderate. I'm a libertarian. I think we should
Right.
have smaller government. So what DOGE is doing helps,
Yeah.
right? What we're seeing in the current administration. But I'm more captivated. I'm excited about the good things that
Yeah.
DOGE is doing. And
Yeah.
I think Trump is good. I don't care about Gulf of Mexico versus Gulf of America,
Yeah.
right? I think it's not important to me. But watching the Democrats and European left as well, like, you dug yourselves in a hole, you got in the hole, you lost the election, you looked up and said, "Oh, we're in a hole." And you have two options. You can climb out of the hole, or you can keep digging. And for some reason they keep digging. And it's like, I think more and more the American people are recognizing, yeah, we probably shouldn't be funding gender equity studies for sparrowfish in Brazil, right? We shouldn't be giving money all over the place for all this nonsense, right? And they can see this is obviously a good thing. And the media has lost its hold, its audience.
Oh yeah.
So fewer and fewer people are listening to CNN's lies
Right.
and MSNBC's lies. And so you have these little pockets that are like, they're addicted to the New York Times, and there's so much has come out. Like, we were giving tens of millions of dollars to the Associated Press and Reuters, and our
To
government
the New York
was giving
Times.
money to the media to lie to us and to lie to other countries as well.
Yeah.
And you had this, so there's so much that they've uncovered. And I see a real promise of really significantly reducing government spending without reducing services to people at all.
Oh yeah.
I think Carolyn Levitt, is that her name? Carolyn Levitt, the
Carol
press
Levitt.
secretary?
Mhm.
She did a really spectacular job of saying, no, 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 we're not cutting individual benefits to anybody who rightfully deserves benefits. We're cutting this waste and that waste, and we're going to stop giving money to 150-year-olds who live in Somalia,
Right.
right? Like we're going to stop sending Social Security checks to Somalia to people who are 150 years old. Crazy that is. Oh, no, no, no. It's not, they're not 150-year-olds. That's just because the year is absent in their record.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're giving money to someone we don't know how old they
How
are?
old they are. Yeah. Yeah.
How is this better? So so I'm watching it and I'm like,
Not available.
no, and there's the one that got me recently. There's this senator, I think he's from Connecticut, Senator Chris Coons or something like that. And he posted this image of a stack of boxes and said, because of Trump cuts, this medicine is not going to get to where it's going to go and the medicine's going to expire soon. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Trump's only been president for like a month.
21
Less
days.
than a month.
20,
Less than a month.
oh, no, 28 days tomorrow or Monday. Yeah.
Yeah. What, what's the shelf life on this medication? And he said it was a medicine that prevents blindness from tropical disease. And I happen to remember a particular medicine that won the Nobel Prize for preventing river blindness from
Oh yeah.
tropical
Yeah.
disease.
It was talked about during COVID. Yeah.
It was called ivermectin, and you guys
Yeah.
told us
Yeah.
this stuff was killing people. But he didn't say ivermectin, but it's obviously ivermectin, and ivermectin has a 5-year shelf life. And the guy's so dumb, or his intern is so dumb. If you zoom in on the picture, there's a box that says manufactured in 2022, expires in 2027. The box on the lower right in the picture. And I'm like, well, that's the same shelf life as ivermectin. So there's like so many things where like, well, and even when you first saw the story, it's like, well, why didn't
Yes.
Biden get stuff delivered before the expiration date in the first place? Like, are you guys shipping medicine that has a 28-day expiration?
Right.
You know, what medicine are you guys sending out? And then okay, it turns out it was made in 2022. Well, why were you sending medicine from 2022? Like, when did you ship this? And then it turns out he says it expires soon. It's like the box itself in the image you sent. The box says, and I've got a friend, Alvi. I don't think you know Alvi. And Alvi's like, well, he was just using that picture to represent it. Well, that's not what he said. He said these
These
medications
medications.
are,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like they're they're so dumb. And I just I'm constantly seeing them say stuff. And I see this like, what did I just to be clear, I see stuff in the Tesla community that I think is
Sure.
I use the word
Absolutely.
roitarded.
Yes.
Right, not retard, roitard, right? Because Reuters is a media agency that some people call Reuters. And I saw this in a Tesla post. A guy was saying, "Oh, look, Volkswagen has this vehicle that has 598 miles of range," and I'm like, that seems unlikely. How big is that? I do a little like I did like the tiniest bit of research. It has an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack. And I'm like, wouldn't that
Wow.
mean it's getting over 6 miles per kilowatt hour? That's, Model 3 that's like an SUV. Model 3 is an efficient sedan that's got a super low, better aerodynamics than this car. And it only gets like 4.5 miles a kilowatt hour. How are they getting 6 miles a kilowatt hour? And you just do like a tiny bit of
Yeah.
research and you go on the Volkswagen newsroom website. They were driving the car at 29 kilometers an hour, which is like 18, it's 18 miles an hour. Yeah, like if I drove a Model 3 at 18 miles an hour, I'd probably get 700 miles of range.
You could open the door and put your foot out and push.
So this guy's like, well, when is Tesla going to come up with a car that'll do this? And like, are you retarded? Like, what did you do any research at all before you said something stupid? Like, and sorry, but this is within the Tesla community. There's so many people like
Right.
Tesla needs
Sure.
to make cars with more range. It's like, no, Tesla needs to make cars with lower prices.
Yeah.
Tesla needs to make cars that drive themselves. Making cars like, and everyone takes this approach of it's about me.
Hmm.
I need a car that will
Hmm.
drive 400 miles in the winter while I'm towing a trailer. Like, well, we're trying to solve the world's problem with sustainable energy, not your problem with getting your trailer to the lake, right? Like what percentage of humans need to do what you're asking? It's like less than 1%. Like Tesla's solving a problem for 98% of the population, 98% of the time. And people are like, but I want more range. Okay, go buy a fucking Lucid. I don't know, you want more range, go get a Lucid. They don't make cars in volume. They're not solving the sustainable, they're not accelerating the transition to sustainable energy. But if you need an electric vehicle that'll go 500 miles, go buy a Lucid,
Well, one of the
right?
other ways that I think the Democrats seem to be just grabbing more shovels to dig deeper and deeper is an area where you're somewhat of an expert. I'm somewhat of an expert, and that is the legal side of it. And of
Oh
course, they've been
God.
suing at the district courts, all over the country to their favorite judges who may or may not have any, Anyway, they've lost a couple. But they've got a couple of other ones that are still hanging around. Have you had any particular ones that were interesting to you or that you think might actually have to go to
Sure.
the, yeah, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
no, I have a very strong opinion about
Okay,
this.
good.
Okay. There's a concept that people might not be familiar with called judicial deference.
Mhm.
That generally speaking, judges show deference to the legislative branch and the executive branch, which means when somebody says they did this, they say, well, wait a minute. The legislative branch is a separate branch, and I have to respect the legislative branch. The executive branch is a separate branch. If you have a lawsuit between Corporation A and Corporation B, the judge doesn't necessarily have to show deference to a corporation in some private lawsuit between corporations.
Right.
But when somebody is saying the executive branch is doing something wrong, or the legislative branch is doing something wrong, the courts have a doctrine called judicial deference. And for a judge to issue an order there was the order that the Secretary of the Treasury can't look at Treasury Department data, right? For a judge to issue a temporary, so I'm going to get technical for a
Yeah,
second.
it's okay.
So the judge issued and this was a New York City District Court judge issuing an order to people in Washington, D.C. Why wasn't this in a Washington, D.C. court? That's a separate point, but issues an order saying no one in the Treasury Department, no one, sorry, the DOGE team and the Secretary of the Treasury and any political appointees can't look at raw data,
Right.
period. I'm scheduling a hearing a week from now,
Right.
and then I'll hear from everybody. And then if you understand how courts work, I'll make a decision on whether I'm going to have a preliminary injunction. Who knows, 2 weeks, a month from now?
Right. Right.
Right. And for people who don't understand this, the temporary restraining order, the executive branch was not heard. They were not even notified that the lawsuit had been filed. Right? They filed a lawsuit. The lawyers go to the judge, one side, say, Judge, this is what we're seeking. Give them a TRO. And the judge issues it. And the insanity of saying, and they're still doing this.
Right.
They're still trying to stop the DOGE team and political appointees from looking at raw data. Like, why?
Yeah. Only in
How
Treasury
is it
now.
harmful for them to look at data?
And only in Treasury now. They've eliminated a bunch of other
CFPB.
departments. Yeah.
I think CFPB too, and maybe Department of Education. Like, how are you? And so there's a concept called irreparable harm,
Yeah.
right? And they're finding irreparable harm where there's clearly not irreparable harm, and they're coming up with these bizarre stories like they fired some guy who's in USAID, or they told him he's got to come back or something like that. And the guy's like, well, I have kids who are special needs who are in this special school, and it would be disruptive to my kids to move them out of a school. I'm going to swear, sorry. You fucking people closed all the schools. You
Marco.
took special ed kids and stuck them in their houses and expected to learn them from a computer without a special ed trained teacher in the room with them. I substitute taught. I worked in a special ed class. Okay, briefly, right? I know how hard that is. I know those kids really struggle to learn. You fucked our kids for over a year on COVID. And now you're telling me that these two kids from this bureaucrat in USAID, they might have to change schools? And that's irreparable harm? Like, it's irreparable harm. Sorry, for people who don't know, irreparable harm is a really, really high standard.
Yeah.
That's not just like, well, my kids might
Inconvenienced.
it might be inconvenient for me to have moved my kids to a different school, and might have to move home quicker than I wanted. Like, when did we owe you the right to live in a foreign country and put your kids in a special needs school in a foreign country? Like, no, bring your kids home. We have plenty of special needs schools in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry your kids might have a minor disruption. That's not irreparable harm. And you're not deferring to, and so it's funny, Elon has been making fun of this, and I sometimes disagree with Elon. People are shocked by this. I think this actually is a constitutional crisis.
Mm.
It's not a constitutional crisis brought on by Trump and Elon.
Mm-hmm.
Trump and Elon are acting within the executive branch.
Mm-hmm.
It is a constitutional crisis for federal judges to assert the authority to micromanage the executive branch.
Yeah. Okay.
It is not their role.
Well,
And
then,
the judges are bringing on a constitutional crisis themselves, and it looks like some judges, and then you find out that this judge's wife runs a nonprofit or an NGO
right.
that's funded by USAID, right? And like, they have conflicts through the roof. And so getting back to the just touching back on this, what I see is, as I have like a cousin who's total blinders, Trump man bad, Elon man bad, they're gonna close all the public schools. Like, what? Where did you read that? She's got all this crazy shit, and like, I'm betting she's never read a Doge post.
Right.
Right. And she actually posted, I normally I don't say anything. Right. And she posted something, would some Trump supporter please explain to me why blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I wrote, and she had all these conditions, like, you can't blame the previous administration, you can whatever. And I just wrote, I'm happy to respond, but I can't respond under the conditions you set, because I am going to have to mention the previous administration in my answer. And I don't think you're going to like my answer. And she hasn't asked me to clarify.
Right.
Right. But they're so, they've convinced themselves that Trump is Hitler and Elon is Hitler, and the world is going to end and everything's going to explode and children are going to die. And so you have this cadre of Democratic politicians who are constantly hitting their propaganda. You have accounts on X like the Krasenstein brothers.
Right.
Constantly hitting the propaganda, and many others, right? MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, whatever. Rachel Cuban, Mark Cuban, sorry, Rachel, Mark Cuban after his transition to Rachel. Um, did you see the one where somebody had video of Mark Cuban in 2017 saying he would downsize the federal government 90%? And now he's saying, what DOGE is doing and
Oh,
Elon's doing is wrong. They're going too aggressively. Like
how
it's
about the, how
so
about
like
the how about the video of Clinton
Clinton and
in
Obama and
1995
Gore.
saying we're going to cut 200,000
Yeah.
positions?
No. So so you have the core of the politicians and the media who are continuing the propaganda, and their audience is shrinking.
Yeah.
But there is a core base, like my cousin,
Yeah.
who anything Trump says is false.
Yes.
Anything Elon says is false. Um, and everything that Rachel Maddow says is true.
True.
And everything that Chuck Schumer says is true. Like they just everything that they're told by their side must be true. And even when it's like obviously moronic, like there's a picture in the picture he posted. The expiration date is 2027. And it was manufactured in 2022. And it's obvious he's talking about ivermectin, which last year they told you was poison. Like, and they can't see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you finally get them to acknowledge that this was false, it's like, well, they have to lie to stop Trump.
Yeah, that's what they say that. They've said that. They said that last time. They said that in the first Trump.
Yeah. So, and what was there's just so many of them. And I'm watching this and I'm like, and the bright side is that it appears like I don't know how accurate the polls that we're seeing are true.
Sure.
It appears that, but even like CNN is saying this, that more and more the public is supporting Trump and supporting Elon.
Yeah.
That
Rasmussen.
the percentage of the population it's growing. And it's one thing if Fox News says it or Trump says it, okay, maybe it's not true. But I think even CNN is reporting this.
Yeah, Rasmussen, who's been extremely accurate for the last 8 years. Rasmussen has Musk's numbers up almost 8% over just a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Right. But I'm just saying, like, even if you look at the partisan, the biased ones, they're acknowledging this.
Right.
And so I think George Carville, I don't know, I didn't know whether this was true or not. George Carville lit up, like they made David Hogg like a vice chairman of the Democratic Party. I saw this great bit.
Yeah.
I think they were, I don't think they were comedians. There was this panel discussion, and the guy said, who's the masculine figure in the Democratic Party? The topic was, why did young men vote for Trump?
Yeah.
And the guy who started off the conversation was saying, look, young men are concerned about climate change.
Yeah.
Young men are pro-choice, right? On a lot of the issues that seemingly divide the Democratic and Republican Party, young men actually side with the Democrats, right? But they voted for Trump.
Yeah.
So why did they vote for Trump? And the answer is, and he was saying this, like, we watch superhero movies. The superheroes are big and strong and fast.
Yeah.
We watch sports. Our heroes on the sports field are big and strong and fast. We go to the gym. We work out because we want to be big and strong and fast. Men want to be masculine.
Yes.
It's in a lot of men want to be like, I'm going to the gym after we talk.
Right.
Right. I go to the gym almost every day. Now, for me, it's a longevity thing, not a masculine thing, but young men want to be big, strong, and fast.
Yeah.
And for 10 plus years, the Democrats have been telling them that's bad.
Yeah.
That everything is their fault.
Toxic
Masculinity. And so he was talking about this, and then he said, well, who's the masculine figure in the Democratic Party? Is it Mayor Pete? Pete Buttigieg? And somebody said, are you saying that because he's gay? It's like, no, I'm saying it because he's obviously not masculine.
Right.
And then they put David Hogg, and there's a photo of David Hogg, and he's of course making the Nazi salute. But you look at his arm, and like, look, I've got guns now, right? His arm was like, my wife is underweight. By product standards, she's underweight. She has bigger arms than David Hogg.
Yeah.
This is they're not giving young men people to look up to and say, that's my guy.
Right.
We got Bernie Sanders and Chuck Schumer and Pete Buttigieg. Like, who's the masculine figure? And they were like, well, Trump isn't masculine. And like, he got shot.
Stood up.
And he got up and he said, fight, fight, fight. There's a reason why that resonated, right? It is masculine.
Right.
And they don't get it.
Well, it's masculine. people forget masculinity isn't 100% about guns. It's also being
Responsible.
well, responsible, but also holding yourself in a certain way. You walk
Yeah.
into the room and people have automatic respect because of the way you hold yourself.
Yeah, yeah. There's a whole
You
lot.
could-
There's a whole lot to it, and the Democrats don't have it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And Trump has it for sure. Trump has that. He'll
yeah.
walk into a
And
room.
Musk too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I just think there's so much going on there. And the Democrats are so deep into this hole of like supporting, they'll say they don't support Hamas, but they won't say anything bad about Hamas. And everything is Israel's fault. And like for some reason, Jews are like kind of being turned off by this approach. And it's so obvious that they're taking, and Europeans, like I'm about to go to Europe, right? We're
Yeah,
about to go on a trip to Europe, and I think we're going to Austria, and there's just a stabbing in Austria. I'm like, oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah. Yeah.
So Europeans are turning a blind eye to, like, look, I have friends who are Muslim. I'm not anti-Muslim, but
My banker for 30 years is Muslim.
importing, millions of young male Muslims or young male whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Without regard to whether they have a criminal history or they have a propensity for violence, and not sending them home when they do things that are wrong. Like, that's probably not a good long-term strategy for your society. And if you
yeah,
say that, they're like, how dare you? Like, well, and
yeah.
we talked about this before we went live. Like, they're criticizing DOGE for having these young guys, and these guys aren't experts. And like, for the last 10 years, you guys told us a 15-year-old girl was an expert on climate.
Right. Yes.
Right? You told us Greta Thunberg
Listen
was
to
an expert on climate when she was 15 years old, and you're telling me that this 19-year-old hacker who got these guys figured out how to get root access to the Treasury Department data.
exactly. Yes.
Nobody before them was able to do it. I'm saying they're pretty good, right? They're not mad that they're not experts. They're mad that they are.
Well, so I think we've agreed that the Democrats are in trouble. The Democrats really probably have to have a meeting and decide that they're going to go in some kind of a different direction, or they're probably going to be toast for another couple of election cycles. We've agreed, I think, that the Trump administration is the wildest and craziest new administration in our lifetimes, at least, and certainly maybe in history, changing the world and literally doing things that we didn't even expect, like suggesting the drawdown of the military by half. It is a wild time to be alive, and as usual, Warren, it's always so much fun to have you on because first of all, we kind of agree a lot, but then in addition to that, but you bring your own obvious perspective from a very different world that you've lived in, and a very different amount. Your education very well. Our education was similar. We both went to law school, but the rest of your education very different. Anyway, so as always, thank you for coming on,
Thank
and
you, Randy.
we'll do it again in a few weeks. If you're not, well, you're going to be traveling around the world, so we'll have to wait till after your European trip maybe, and we'll get you back on.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
and I think I may have been slightly less coherent than usual. I kind of went all over the map, but I
No,
appreciate
you
you
were
listening.
so passionate though. The passion. It's all about the passion.
Well, don't do that. Don't do that. No,
No, no,
no.
no. Hold your hand. Thanks again, Warren. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.